someone recommended that I check out the quirky sci-fi movie The Vast of Night, which was released as an Amazon original. So what did I think about it? In New Mexico in the 1950s, a young telephone operator and a radio DJ discover some strange audio, and they set out to find out what's causing it and what it could mean. Now, right from the start, you have to give this movie a chance, because for the first 20-ish minutes, it's a little chaotic. It's a little bit rough. We follow the camera as it goes into a high school basketball game. And we meet our main character, Emmett, who is the radio DJ. And he's wondering about helping people. And then he encounters the young Faye, who is also our phone operator. Now, a lot of this as setup seems a bit unnecessary. We're just kind of thrown into, we don't know the context, it's kind of grainy. We get a sense of the setting, that it's a kind of small rural town where the entire town is coming to a high school basketball game, and we get a sense for the timing because we see the cars and we see the clothing that everybody is wearing. But in this, the camera really just follows along, and some of it feels like a long continuous take, and then others are shorter scenes. But right from the get-go, once we meet Emmett, we follow him along throughout the rest of the story. Now, there is a bit of patience that you have to have for this slow burn, but you are going to be rewarded if you stick it out. I mean, it's mainly dialogue driven, which I really liked, because it means that the movie, the story, is not reliant on any type of action, that it truly is being carried by the dialogue of the story, the entire narrative, and our actors who are delivering those lines. For a lot of people, there's going to be two different versions on Amazon Prime of this movie that you can watch. One is the UHD, which is the ultra high def, and then one is just the regular high def. I definitely recommend watching the UHD version. And that's because most films shoot in a flat color profile, which means there's not a lot of contrast, there's not a lot of color detail in it. All of that is fixed after the film has been shot, that they do all of this color correction, they play with the contrast, the saturations, all of that. So when you're looking at a film that is just shot in neutral, it's very just kind of dull looking. And that's how the regular version appears. Now, the UHD version of this film is still a little bit neutral, but it does have some more contrast in it. So when they go into the dark scenes, there's actually darkness there, not just this gray that happens. Overall, I think a lot of it could have been more color corrected, to play with it a little bit more, to pull out some of the details so it doesn't get lost, because the entire story takes place in one night. And so when there's not a lot of contrast between the dark and the light, then everything just kind of gets lost and we miss some detail. I wish they would have color corrected it a little bit more to just give us a richer picture. I really like the actors in this. I mean, they stutter and they stammer through their dialogue, especially as they're trying to figure out what's going on, as they're trying to discover the clues, as they're figuring out, well, what is this audio? And they go back and forth. But other times they're not stammering. Other times their replies are rapid fire. It adds an air of genuineness to their dialogue that it makes it really feel true to life. Like that's how we would have a conversation. Now in this, they do something that I absolutely love. The filmmakers sit on a subject and do some very long takes. I mean, I'm talking minutes on a subject. And what that does, especially when a movie is dialogue driven and you're sitting on a subject, you are just honed in and super focused to the words that they're saying. And I loved it. It sucked me in, because there are a lot of shots where you see maybe Faye as the operator. She's sitting in her operator booth and you just see her from the side and the camera does not move. And so we watch her change the little buttons, because again, this is the 1950s, so she's pulling out the cables and plugging it in and just, to connect the calls. But she's also then having conversations. We hear most of the audio coming back to us, but it truly is just sitting on her. That may seem a little bit boring from a visual standpoint, but from a storytelling part, that is amazing. It was really just engaging and intriguing, and I loved that. They also do some long continuous shots in the film as well. And anytime those can be executed well, I really appreciate that, because it draws you in even more to the movie. The story itself is pretty simple, but that allows the actors to drive the narrative. And the premise itself is simple too, but that allows for an air of mystery to be built. as we follow along with our two lead characters, as they are uncovering clues, as they're having conversations with people, and slight clues are opening up, and then they try and deduce what's happening, and they're truly going along for the ride, and we are there with them. And you get some callers who have information, and so caller A will have some information, caller B will have different information, and set that up and combine it, and it builds a larger narrative, but at no time is it really complex. So it's easy to follow, but the simplicity of that makes it so beautiful. Now at 89 minutes, it is the perfect length, and it doesn't drag despite that weird opening sequence that you're just kind of trying to figure out what's going on and why am I watching, because we haven't really gotten to the point, but it's truly immersing us into the world that we are going to spend the next hour and a half in. And the good charisma and the urgency that the actors share, that really helps also. That really just sucks you into the pace and keeps you going, keeps the story moving along, and doesn't drag at all. Now, one thing that I have to point out, because I worked in radio for about 20 years, is the radio station that Emmett works for. Now, the call letters of the station in New Mexico is WOTW. Now, as a point of just reference, any radio station that is west of the Mississippi, their call letters begin with K. Anything to the east, theirs begin with W. So think like WKRP in Cincinnati, right? Well, that's east of the Mississippi. So it's just kind of goof on the filmmaker's part to have a radio station based in New Mexico, which is definitely west of the Mississippi, and it has to start with W. Is that going to affect your enjoyment of the film at all? No. Are you wondering probably, Chris, shut up, why in the world are you talking about this? I'm quite certain you are. Okay, let's move on. Now, this is a fun sci-fi mystery that will suck you in because of some of the nostalgia and the story, but it's really going to keep you there because of the long shots of the dialogue and of our actors. There's no sex, nudity, or violence, but there is some profanity. I give The Vast of Night 4.5 out of 5 couches. So do you have a favorite sci-fi film? Let me know what that is in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for catching with me.